All right, let's get right into it. When you think about a neural network, you're probably picturing all these interconnected neurons, right? Thousands, maybe millions of them, all working together. But here's the question. What actually tells one of those neurons to, well, to do anything, to fire off a signal? That's the magic of the activation function. It's literally the on switch that brings the whole network to life.
So, what's the real difference between a simple calculator and an AI that can compose music or identify a cat in a photo? What's that secret sauce that gives a neural network its incredible ability to learn from data? Well, it turns out it all comes down to this one crucial component we're about to break down.
And it all starts with a problem. A big one. It's called the trap of linearity. See, without an activation function, it doesn't matter how many layers you stack in your network, 100, 1,000, you're basically just doing a bunch of simple straight line math. It's like trying to draw a circle using only a ruler. You just can't. You're stuck in the world of straight lines. And that's where the activation function steps in to save the day. You can think of it like a little gatekeeper sitting inside every single neuron. It looks at the information coming in and makes a decision. Is this signal important enough to pass along? And by making that simple decision, it introduces something called non-linearity. It gives the network the ability to bend, to curve, and to learn complex shapes in the data. So let's just put this side by side, because the difference is night and day. Without activations, your network is just a glorified linear model. It's fundamentally limited. It can't grasp the messy, complicated patterns that define the real world. But once you add them in, it transforms into this incredibly powerful tool that can model all sorts of intricate, non-linear relationships. That, right there, is the whole game. Okay, so how did the early pioneers of AI first figure out how to break out of that linear prison? Well, their solution was actually really elegant. They used these smooth S-shaped curves that could gently bend the data and finally allow networks to start modeling more interesting things. So, meet one of the originals, the sigmoid function. Its genius is this classic S-curve you see here. What it does is it takes any number you throw at it, positive, negative, huge, tiny, doesn't matter, and it squashes it down into a nice, neat range between 0 and 1. And that was a huge deal, because suddenly the output of a neuron could be interpreted as a probability. And this property made it super useful. That 0 to 1 output is just perfect for any situation where you need a probability. That's why, even today, you'll still find the sigmoid function being used in the final layer of a network, especially for binary classification. Simple yes or no questions like, is this email spam or not spam? All right, so from sigmoid, we get its close cousin, tan, which stands for hyperbolic tangent. As you can see, it has a very similar S shape, but with one really important tweak you can spot on the graph. It changes the output range. So instead of going from 0 to 1, Tanh squashes values between -1 and +1. Now this might seem like a small change, but it means the output is zero-centered. And it turns out that little property actually helps the network's learning process run a bit more smoothly. Because of this, for a while, Tanh became the go-to choice over sigmoid for the hidden layers inside the network. But these early functions had a major flaw. It was a kind of hidden problem that wasn't obvious at first, but as people started building deeper and deeper networks, it became a massive roadblock. This problem has a famous name, the vanishing gradient. And this quote just nails the issue. See the ends of the sigmoid and Tanh curves? They get really flat. When a neuron's input lands in one of those flat, saturated regions, its gradient, think of it as the learning signal, is almost zero. Now, in a deep network, you have to pass this signal back through many layers. If you keep multiplying a number by something close to 0, it's just going to disappear. The signal vanishes, and the earliest layers of the network stop learning completely. So when you put them head to head, you see the trade-offs. Tanh had that nice zero-centered property, but they both shared the exact same fatal flaw. They were incredibly prone to this vanishing gradient problem. This weakness literally set the stage for the next big thing, a totally new solution. And that solution was, well, it was almost shockingly simple. But it sparked a complete revolution in deep learning. It's called ReLU, and it pretty much became the new industry standard overnight because it tackled that vanishing gradient problem head on. This is it, the rectified linear unit, or ReLU. I mean, just look at how simple that graph is. The rule couldn't be easier. If the input number is positive, you just let it pass through as is. If the input is negative, you just make it 0. That's it. No fancy S-curves, just a clean, simple cutoff.
And this simplicity is pure genius. First, it's incredibly fast for a computer to calculate. But the real win? For any positive input, the gradient is a constant one. That means the learning signal can flow backward through the network perfectly without vanishing. This also leads to a cool side effect called sparse activation, which just means only a fraction of your neurons are active at any one time, making the whole network really efficient. It's no wonder it became the default choice for hidden layers everywhere.
But, of course, nothing's ever that perfect, is it? ReLU introduced its own little quirk, a problem known as the dying ReLU. Here's what can happen. If a neuron gets a big update that pushes its inputs to always be negative, it will just keep outputting 0. And if the output is always 0, the gradient is always 0, and that neuron just gets stuck. It effectively dies and stops participating in the learning process.
And the fix was, you guessed it, another brilliantly simple idea. Meet Leaky ReLU. The name tells you everything you need to know. Instead of clamping all negative values to a hard 0, it allows for a tiny leak, a very small negative slope. This gives those dead neurons a lifeline, a chance to spring back to life. That tiny little leak means that even for negative inputs, there's always a small, non-zero gradient. And that's enough to prevent a neuron from dying off completely. It gives it a chance to recover during training and start contributing again. It's a really small tweak, but it adds a whole lot of robustness to the network. Okay, so everything we've talked about so far, Sigmoid, Tanh, ReLU, they're all general-purpose functions you'd use in the hidden layers. But there's one more crucial function we have to cover. This one is a total specialist, designed for one very specific, very important job, telling you which categories something belongs to. This specialist is the Softmax function. Its whole job is to hang out at the very end of the network. It takes the final, messy, raw output scores, just a bunch of numbers, and it transforms them into something we humans can actually understand, a clean probability distribution. So how does it pull this off? Well, imagine the network is trying to classify an image and it spits out some raw scores for cat, dog, and bird. Softmax takes those scores, does a bit of math to make them all positive, and then, this is the key part, it normalizes them so that they all add up perfectly to 1, or 100%. What you get is a clear probability for each possible class. And because of this specific job, you're pretty much only ever going to see Softmax in one place, the very last layer of a neural network. It's the absolute go-to function whenever your model needs to choose between more than 2 options. If it's cat versus dog versus bird, you're gonna want Softmax at the end. And this bar chart shows you exactly what that final output looks like. It's so clear, right? The raw, messy scores have been converted into these beautiful probabilities. The network isn't just guessing, it's telling you with confidence, I am 80% sure this is a cat, 15% sure it's a dog, and only 5% sure it's a bird. The final decision is obvious. So, we've come a long way, haven't we? From the early S-curves to the game-changing ReLU, all the way to a specialist like Softmax. Activation functions have been absolutely central to every major leap forward in AI. Which, of course, brings us to a final thought. With research moving this fast, you have to wonder, is the next big breakthrough, maybe even the perfect activation function, still out there, just waiting to be discovered?